Good morning, everyone. This is Financial Literacy 101, and today I want to take a side conversation. I want to take a point at this, how Christianity controls Black people. And a lot of people want to know, is this true or not? This is just my perspective. This is about the way I think about it. So for some people who are attached, who are linked in, who are absorbed inside their religion, and most likely Christianity, let's have the conversation, okay? Let's have the conversation. So I'm going to be sharing my screen here because I do want you guys to see some of the things that I'm absolutely looking at, okay? So first and foremost, I just have some questions that I went over and I actually checked on the internet. So let's look at that very, very quickly, okay? Let's look at that very, very quickly. Let me get this out of your way. And I'm going to blow these questions up for everybody to see. And the people on Instagram, just bear with me. I'm just going to be reading. So one of the first question, what Bible was before the Great Bible? And a lot of people don't even know about the Great Bible, okay? The Geneva Bible. This is a very popular Bible that if you was ever in seminary school or around reverends, bishops, or pastors, you might have heard of the Geneva Bible. It says, follow the Great Bible of 1539, the first authorized Bible in English, which was authorized Bible of the Church of England. Then it goes into what is the earliest version of the Bible. The oldest extant copy of a complete Bible is an early 4th century parchment book preserved in Vatican Library and is known as the Codex Bible. This is the Codex Bible. So we have the Codex Bible, we have the Geneva Bible, and then now also the Christian Bible was 2 sections, the Old Testament and the New Testament. The Old Testament is the original Hebrew Bible, the sacred scripture of the Jewish faith, written at a different time between about 1200 and 165 BC. Okay, these are just some random questions I just wanted to know. Then it says, according to both Jewish and Christian dogma, the books of Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy, the first 5 books of the Bible, the entirety of the Torah, were all written by Moses in about 1300 BC. There are a few issues with this, however, such as the lack of evidence that Moses ever existed. Okay, so let's move on. I've done quite a bit of research, but I'm gonna break this down in the best way possible that you guys can understand. So let's go over here to Britannica. I don't like that view. Give me 1 second. To Britannica, and I'm gonna try to blow this up well so we can all read it together. Okay. It says the First Council of Nicaea. Now, if anyone knows anything about when the Bible was discovered or created, because essentially a lot of us believe that the Bible was written by inspired men by God. But what came to find out through Vatican and the Roman Empire, that this Bible was actually created, was actually invented to control people. Okay. So let's read on. The First Council of Nicaea, 325 AD, the first ecumenical council of the Christian church, meeting in ancient Nicaea. It was called by the Emperor Constantine I, an unbaptized catechumen who presided over the opening session and took part in this discussion. He hoped a general council of the church would solve the problem created in the Eastern Church by Arianism, a heresy first proposed by Arius of Alexandria that affirmed that confirmed that Christ is not divine, but a created being. Pope Sylvester I did not attend the council, but was represented. Okay, let's move on. Now you see this picture here with these guys right here. It looks like the KKK, but flipped up. Same difference to me, but nonetheless, in 325 AD, Emperor Constantine invited every bishop in the church to gather in Nicaea and formally establish Christian doctrine. What church they're talking about? Anybody know what church they're talking about? They're talking about the Catholic Church. You can tell essentially by the garments and some of the ornaments that they're wearing and holding that this is the Catholic Church. I digress. The goal was to unite the increasingly divided church with a set of beliefs. Okay. Let me give you a little more. Let's see if we can all see this together. Here we go. The goal was to unite the increasingly divided church with a set of beliefs its leaders agreed on, and will hold each other accountable to. And by the way, this is by overviewbible.com. That's overviewbible.com. This meeting, known as the First Council of Nicaea, was specifically called to make a decision about Arianism, the belief that God created Jesus and that Jesus was not internal or one with God. Let me read that again. A decision about Arianism, the belief that God created Jesus and that Jesus was not internal or one with God. For the first time, leaders from every corner of the church will formally declare who Jesus was in relation to God. What is missing here? What is missing in this passage? Let me tell you what's missing. At no time do you ever hear that God told the Council of Nicaea to write the Bible. At no time did they ever mention that God ordered them to write in the precincts of the Bible. Does anyone read this? Because there's no other proof that any other group has came together and written the Bible. This is not the most popular conversation to have, but I believe this is truthworthy in order to free people from their bondage and strongholds, as what some people in the church may say. You're bonded. You're in a stronghold. Let me continue, though. Again, I just want to point out, for the first time, leaders from every corner of the church would formally declare who Jesus was in relation to God. Not God telling them who Jesus was, not Jesus telling them who God was, but them declaring amongst themselves, human beings, Jesus was in relation to God. Arianism was growing in popularity even among church leaders and those who opposed its believed salvation was at stake. If Christians were wrong about who Christ was, did they really even believe in him? So now they're believing in what seems to be a fictitious symbol of God or Christ, and there is no actual proof. Again, this goes back into the reality that this is probably a figure of your imagination. Now, the emperor thought the dispute was meaningless, but by 325 AD, these two competing ideas of who Jesus was were threatening to tear the church and, by extension, the newly Christianized Roman Empire into two. Constantine was a necessary interest in the theological outcome, so as long as it put an end to the division. So he called together the church first ecumenical council, a gathering of leaders from the global church. So basically they said, let's get together and let's come to a conclusion of what this whole Christianity thing is about before we split the Roman Empire into two. Okay, so they had to call all the bishops into order. Some have argued that the First Council of Nicaea invented the Trinity and that its statement of faith didn't truly reflect the beliefs of the church. Every bishop was invited, but only a fraction, traditionally 318 of them, showed up at the council. So how could the council's decision really represent the entire church, especially at a time when the church was so divided? And since council members had to sign the statement of faith or face excommunication, were they really in agreement or simply saving their own skin? Not to mention, the church continued to debate and even overturn the council's decision in the centuries that followed. The First Council of Nicaea played a pivotal role in the early church and directly impacted the doctrine Christian churches uphold today. The council produced the Nicene Creed, which many churches around the world still use as their statement of faith. But what exactly was decided at the council and who decided it? Here's what we know. Now, that was a whole mouthful of how the Bible was essentially created by the Council of Nicaea back in 325 AD. A lot of us are trying to figure out now, how does it relate to Black people and the control that Christianity and the Bible have over Black people? Okay. Okay. Let's move on. Now, let's talk about this very, very quickly. I'm going to blow this up as big as I can. African Americans and Christianity. The first Great Awakening led many enslaved people in the United States to convert to Christianity. Again, many enslaved people in the United States to convert. To convert. That means change, transform, move into, merge, emancipate, whatever. Through the 18th and 19th centuries, distinct black churches emerged seeking autonomy from white Christians. These denominations grew and now thrive in the present day. They are historically influenced by various political and religious movements, including black nationalism and liberation theology. That's no longer the case when it comes to black nationalism, but liberation is still a factor. Let's move on. The first African captains entered English North American colony through Jamestown, Virginia in 1619. But we know that the first slaves actually arrived in the new land in America, in the U.S., back in 1526, 93 years prior to 1619. For over 200 years, Africans largely from the west coast of Africa were brought to the United States in the slave trade. At first, Christianity made few inroads into the African slave population, which had its own religious traditions. Again, Christianity made few inroads into the African slave population, which had its own religious traditions. To some extent, whites resisted missionizing the slaves, fearing perhaps that converted slaves would have to be freed and treated with the respect that would be accorded to fellow Christians. Does everyone understand what I am talking about? We need to understand that our ancestors was converted into Christianity through torture, through fear, through chaos. And even through that, it tells you we have our own religious traditions. Prior to the transatlantic slave trade, there was really no remnants or evidence of Christianity in Africa. But how is it today that majority of foundational Black Americans are Christians? A religion essentially that keeps us docile, that keeps us nonviolent, that keeps us forgiving our enemy. I'm just asking a question. The first large-scale convergence of slaves, coincided with the Great Awakening in the mid-18th century when the colonies were swept with a religious spirit that crossed lines of race. The historic tenet of Black Christianity and the Methodist and Baptist churches during the antebellum period, when the vast majority of African Americans remained slaves, it was Methodist and Baptist evangelicals who worked most successfully in the slave quarters. Minimally biblical things spoke directly to the conditions of Black oppression, such as the captivity of Israel, which was likened to plantation slavery, and Israel exodus from Egypt, which became a metaphor for escape to the north. A lot of us would like to ask ourselves, we still are backsliding in your faith when it comes to Christianity. And a lot of us was essentially, I don't want to say brainwashed, but I want to say as when we were young, Christianity was just inbred in us. It was fed to us. We were made to go to church. We didn't have a choice because we were young, right? We didn't have a choice. But as we started to get older, a lot of us moved away from the church. And then when times got rough, when times got hard, we moved back to the church. And some of us felt like when that occurred, we were doing a lot better spiritually, also in our everyday life. But during that time, you were still trying to make a way for yourself. You were still applying for jobs or being an entrepreneur or trying to create things. And all glory goes to God. That's what we always have known. Why is this significant in the Black community? because religion is actually used not only as a tool for control, not only, but it's also used as a tool to divide us against each other. Right off the back, if I told someone, hey, I'm a Muslim, automatically no one's listening to me if they're a Christian. Now, Muslims will come on and listen to what I have to say until they realize I'm not a Muslim either. If I say I'm a Christian, then all the Christians will listen to me and I'll have 100,000 subscribers. But my question is, what have Christianity done for us prior to slavery, during slavery, and now after slavery? Oh, well, brother, if you don't believe in Jesus Christ and that he died on the cross for your salvation and your sins, then you'll burn in the lake of fire, and thus you'll go to hell. You won't be able to go to heaven. And my question to everyone is, if everything in this life has to be proven with some sort of evidence and or research or data, then why is it that nothing about Christianity or your religion has to be proven? And then somebody thought, well, you got to have faith. Faith in what? Faith in something that seems to be fictitious. Faith in something that keeps me nonviolent and docile, that keeps me uneducated, that keep me in a certain place where I'm not. These are just the questions that I have. These are just the questions that I have. But I would like to go to the Bible, and I would like to read some passages for that. Okay? So let me move on. And somebody here says, how about an atheist like me? What is the definition of faith? I give you the short layman's term answer. Believing in something that you can't see, faith. You just know it's there. You just know it's real. Okay? Let me move on. Let me take myself over to the good old Bible. We're looking at the NIV version. Don't worry, ladies and gentlemen. Let me see if I can blow this up. Okay. I think I went one chapter. I want to read a verse for you. This is 2 Kings chapter 2, verse 23. And this is a random verse that I picked out. This is random. And I want people to follow me. I want people to help me to understand where God is in this statement. Okay. This is what I want to know. It says, Elijah is jeered. From there, Elijah went up to Bethel. As he was walking along the road, some boys came out of town and jeered at him. Get out of here, Baldy, they said. Get out of here, Baldy. He turned around, looked at them, and called down a curse on them in the name of the Lord. Then 2 bears came out of the woods and mauled 42 of the boys, and he went on to Mount Carmel, and from there returned to Samaria. Anyone? Can anyone help me out with this one? Let me see if I can. Can anyone help me out with this verse right here? Does anyone help me out with this? From there, Elijah went up to Bethel. As he was walking along the road, some boys came out of town and jeered at him. Get out of here, Baldy, they said. Get out of here, Baldy. He turned around, looked at them, and called down a curse on them in the name of the Lord. Then 2 bears came out of the woods and mauled 42 of the boys and went on to Mount Carmel and from return to Samaria. So does anyone have any definition why God, after Elijah tried to curse, well, Elijah cursed them by using God, and then God, it says here that he cursed them in the name of the Lord. And then 2 bears came out of the woods and mauled 42 of the boys, and he went on to Micah. I want to know, what significance does that play? Is that the God you serve? Is that the God that a lot of people serve? I see that Wixnut says because that God is a monster. Okay. Again, I'm non-religious in the sense of, do I believe there's a God? I do, but not when it comes to this particular thing here. He says, I apologize for asking questions. If you are preaching, I am not preaching. Okay, I'm teaching is the difference. Let's see what else we have in the chat room. I'm gonna see what in the comments. Thank you, King Blogs, for your donation. I appreciate that. We got good morning, Shina. Good morning to you as well. We got Mitch out of Alaska. Good morning to you, good sir. We were conditioned. Okay, now the truth is coming out. Okay. We were conditioned. Because absolutely we were. Absolutely we were. Now, I know that everything that I'm saying is not popular, and it may sting a little. This may sting a little because anytime you ask a Christian, why do they believe, they revert to the Bible. I say, okay, well, who wrote the Bible? Well, God wrote the Bible. A lot of people don't even know who wrote the Bible. No one does their research in these regards. But then you go back and you find out that the Council of Nicaea 325, back in 325 AD, wrote the Bible for the sense of control. And that they were trying to essentially make up God, then make up Jesus, then say they believe that the Holy Trinity was invented. It's hard to come to a conclusion when it comes about religion, because this is where people hide themselves into. This is where a lot of people draw their strength from. A lot of people feel safe. But essentially, we need to understand the information and where it comes from and how it plays a pivotal role in our life. Now, granted, let me be truthful. Christianity has changed a lot of people to be actually great people. See, this conversation is not about whether or not you should follow Christianity or not. It's for you to actually understand where Christianity came from and the purpose of Christianity and how it controls Black people. And they use this in some good ways, and they use this in very evil ways. They use this as division because they know that a group of people who are divided among themselves will fall. Divide and conquer. Divide and conquer. We're the one group who will not do business with other non-Black Christians. When I'm talking about the mass population, the mass concentration of Black people, one of the first things that someone will ask you probably in the next 5 to 10 questions is, do you believe in God? What God do you serve? You're like, what does that have to do with the contract? Well, I don't like to deal with no Christian. I don't like to deal with nobody who ain't no Christian. Well, brother, where did you get your Christianity from? Well, my mama was a Christian and my daddy was a Christian. Okay, where did they get it from? Oh, what are you alluding to? We got Christianity in slavery? Yes. It was beaten into us. And some of us, even to this day, we know the truth or the origination and the origin of this religion, but we like to hang on to it. And I'm not here to tell nobody follow, don't follow, believe, don't believe, have faith, don't have faith. I'm not saying that. But I'm saying I believe once you do the research, just think about this. You're going to live your life following a religion that you know really nothing about. And here's the thing. Take the Bible away. Act as though the Bible was never given to you. You never heard a Bible verse. No one ever spoke out of the Bible. Now someone simply told you about God. Because any great story needs a reference. Any belief system is backed by documents or backed by literature or backed by some form of education. And this is what the Council of Nicaea understood. See, this was during a time where the Roman Empire was going to be split in two, and they created this to control the perspective and narrative to form a nation together, and also to keep the people subdued. Because anytime you would start asking questions that nobody can understand, well, there's no God, who invented the sky? Back then, science wasn't a big thing. Well, there must be a higher being up there. But see, when our ancestors rather, were in Africa, they served all other types of gods. They knew nothing of this Christian God. They knew nothing of Christianity. But this started during the transatlantic slave trade and also the colonization of Africa. Now, majority of Africans are even Christians because they were colonized. Some of their religions they could not even practice. Some of the dances they couldn't even practice when they were being colonized. They had to study religion in the form of Christianity, just as though Black Americans. How is it that majority of a group of people that originates from a continent, that 800 million of them all believe in the same God, or majority of them? Now, I understand that Africa has a lot of Muslims, so don't take, but there's a large population of Christians in Africa and the UK and America that are melanated people. If you don't believe this is one of the fronts that we had to divulge, that we had to take in, that we had to assimilate inside in order to survive, then you would be a damn fool to believe that. But see, some people, that's why I took away the Bible. Oh, well, you know, in the beginning, God created heaven and earth. Sounds like a good story. And when you get 318 well-educated men together, I'm pretty sure they can come up with one book. I know guys who write books. One guy who writes many books, and they're masterful books. Like what's the dude? Dan Brown, who wrote the Da Vinci Code. Very good book. Angels and Demons. Very good book. One guy. Just think about 318 men getting together and writing one book. This is something to think about, ladies and gentlemen. I'm not trying to rip anyone from their religion or stop you from believing, but this is something to think about, that essentially religions in some regards can be roadblocks to your freedom subconsciously. Because religion, in a sense, can free you, and it can enjail you and prevent you from living your best life. And some people would like to coerce that statement to saying, oh, you just want to live in sin. Well, let's talk about it. One more question before I go. People who are Christian followers, they will say that God is omnipotent. God is all powerful. God is the first and the last. He knows everything. So I ask most people this question. Me and my fiance, we talked about this plenty of times. If God is the first and the last, omnipotent, all powerful, all knowing, then why did God create Adam and Eve? And which, that's not their original names, but for English sake, not Hebrew, for English sake, Adam and Eve, why did he create them? Then why did he create a garden that they could eat of every tree? And I'll just say, for the sake of argument, let's just say the tree of life. They couldn't eat from the tree of life. Why put a tree in a garden that they can't eat from? But one of the verses in the Bible, I don't know the exact reference, is that you should not tempt the Lord thy God. You should not tempt the Lord thy God, but the Lord thy God can tempt you. But even though I'm all knowing, I'm all powerful, I put a tree in the Garden of Eden that you cannot eat of. And I tell you, do not eat of the tree of life. You're going to eat of every other tree, but not that tree. Tempting. It's kind of like picture your son or daughter, their favorite dessert, hot, warm chocolate chip cookies. And you leave those chocolate chip cookies on the counter every day, warm and fresh. And you say, you can't eat these. And they're crying, they're pounding. They're like, why? Why would you put them out here if I can't eat them? It's very tempting, but you should not tempt the Lord thy God. Then in the midst of this beginning, God was casting Lucifer out of heaven. Okay. Lucifer is cast down to earth. Lucifer energy, Lucifer spirit, whatever you want to call it, enters a serpent. Some people say a snake. The Bible says a serpent. The serpent goes up to Eve and says, hey, you should eat of the tree of life. She was like, oh, God said we can't eat from that tree. Well, if you eat from the tree of life, your eyes will be open like God. Won't you go tell Adam to eat from it too? God is all knowing and all powerful. He knew this was going to happen. So Eve convinced Adam. Adam said, well, hey man, if you down, I'm down. Let's go. Let's go eat from the tree. They eat from the tree, and then their eyes were open, and they realized that they were naked, and they went to go hide behind a bush when they heard the voice of God. And God said, Adam, where are you? Ladies and gentlemen, God is all-knowing, all-powerful. Adam is hiding from God. God is asking where he is. God already knows where he is. Why play these games? If you're all-knowing, all-powerful, the first and the last, then you already knew what's going to happen before it happens. And some of y'all like to believe that this is real. This is a game. This is a story. This is manipulation and coercion of the mind to control people. It's a good story. It's a good book of different tales and stories. This is my belief. Do I believe there's a God? Yes, I do. But I don't believe I'm hiding behind this bush, God. Why are you hiding behind this bush? Well, I realized I was naked. Well, how did you do that? I ate this fruit from the tree of life that this woman you gave me. But you knew it was wrong, right, Adam? Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to stop right there. I'm going to come on. I'm going to do part 2 of this because we really need to break down some of these Bible verses and really dissect what it actually really means. I want to thank all you guys for joining me. I'll probably be back on the next hour or so, but I just want to leave you with that little bit to really think about. If somebody's all powerful, all knowing, then why set you up? It's like someone say, hey man, if you go across the street, the door is open. There's $1 million right in the doorway. Just take the suitcase and go. But as soon as you go over there, they're like 911. Yeah, there's a robbery in progress. I digress. Just think about it, guys. Talk to you guys on the next one. I'm out.